The search began shortly after 8 Monday night when the twin-engine plane piloted by Charlie Fowler went off radar screens. The last reported position was near Highway 388 in the Burnt Mill Creek area. Searchers worked past midnight, but fog forced the search to be called off, to be resumed this morning. Sheriff's deputies were joined by a helicopter from Tyndall Air Force Base and members of the Highway Patrol, Marine Patrol, and friends and family of Fowler. The morning fog finally started to lift, and around 10 o'clock, the rescue chopper spotted the wreckage north of 388 in a heavily wooded area. The wreckage was strewn across a wide area, and searchers feared the worst.
Looking at it from the air, you could tell it was impossible anyone to be alive. And we got sit down and went out to the scene, and one of the officers walked up, and he said, "My God, he's alive," you know. And it was unbelievable. You just really had to be there and see him, you know, to walk up and all that wreckage and things piled on top of him, a tree laying across him. He's laying there on his back with his hands crossed praying.
Fowler's prayers and those of his family were answered for the third time. Fowler has been in 2 previous plane crashes, the most recent in 1980 when his voice box was crushed and Fowler was told he wouldn't speak again. However, the minister and founder of the Charlie Fowler Christian School defied the doctors then and defied the odds this time. The cause of the crash is being investigated by the FAA, but Pitts says Fowler indicated to him that he lost one of his engines. Fowler was taken to Gulf Coast Hospital and was in surgery this afternoon for a crushed hip and broken nose, but will apparently be fine. As for the rescue, Pitts praised the work of the crew from Tyndall, and all the searchers are calling the event a miracle.
Well, I think it is. I think this is a good Christmas present for the whole county. You know, who else could live through something like that? And a man, you know, a minister that's done what he's done for the people and what he's doing for the people, I just think it's tremendous, you know. I'd be glad to see anyone alive, but especially someone of his stature, you know, and it ought to prove to a lot of people there's a God.
Robert Kittle, News Center 13.
On the night of December 1st, 1986, I was watching TV when all of a sudden a news flash said that a pilot and a plane had went off radar coming in for a landing in Panama City, Florida. And I thought, oh, I hope that's not Pastor Fowler. And my phone rang and my dad told me that it was. And it was upsetting, and we prayed, and I thought, wow, hope he makes it. And the next morning, my dad called me early. I said, "Dad, have they found him yet?" And he said, "No." I went, "Oh God, no, Dad, how could he have made it all night long? There's no way he wouldn't say nothing." So we drove out to the area that the family had told us they were, and we get there, and there's people out just saying, "He's alive, he's alive, he's alive," and we just went, wow, no way, but he was. So we followed the ambulance to the hospital, and we get there, and they're wheeling him in, and I could see his foot just dangling at the end of his leg, and he's just laying there. You couldn't recognize him. He was beyond recognition, and he's just going, "Love y'all, love y'all, love y'all." I'm like, couldn't say nothing. So we drove back out to the scene, and we went way back into the woods and found where the plane crash was, and you could see the tree line where it started hitting the trees and then crashed, and it was no just glide. It was a slam dunk right into the ground. Everything just practically exploded with no fire. And I'm walking all around, parts scattered 50 yards, and I found his shoes, and there was a big piece of bone gouged in it, and I just went, "Oh God," you know, and I gave them to his father, and that night I went home and wrote this song. Do you ever wonder if miracles still happen today? pull up a chair and hear what I gotta say. You may walk away with a different point of view. He was all packed up and flying along, Panama City bound, singing a song. Up in the air, almost home, with no worries, what could go wrong? The fog in the sky made it hard on the eyes. With modern sophistication, there was a positive affirmation. Whatever happened that night, the FAA would find out. The rest of the story's what miracles are all about. Well, his engines blew and the gauges too. What now could he possibly do? He grabbed on tight to hold his plane steady, breathed a prayer of faith, and braced himself ready. He was cutting them trees at 100 miles an hour. Oh, what a way to test God's loving power. Bashed and battered and tossed all around, wondering if in time he'd ever be found. Over 14 hours he lay there waiting, his plane in pieces, he was still a prey. His bones were broken, he was bleeding, the mosquitoes a biting, the wet cold too. Not much more as most folks ever been through. So the search was on for quite a while, many a prayer covering so many miles. What the deputies found, they'll always remember the Reverend alive on the second day of December. Was a miracle for Charlie Fowler. He had God's loving power. He held on for every hour. The faith of Charlie Fowler. He arrived at the hospital to stay over a month. Sometimes the Lord don't heal all at once. For every injury he sustained, he needed more prayer to make it through the pain. Christmas up there was more than he could stand. Lord, are you hearing that praise, preacher man? Finally released to be going home, to be with his family, waiting alone. Many a doctor said you'll never walk again. God bless him, some don't know, with faith you win. It happened on a service held through the week. The Lord let the pastor stand on his own 2 feet. Was a miracle for Charlie Fowler. He had God's loving power. He held on for every hour. The faith of Charlie Fowler. Fowler. Yeah, the face, Charlie Fowler.
Investigators started sifting through the wreckage of Charlie Fowler's twin-engine Cessna Wednesday morning, trying to determine the cause of the crash. Sheriff Lavelle Pitt said Fowler told him he lost an engine, but the National Transportation Safety Board investigator on the scene says no conclusions have been reached. While the cause of the crash is still unknown, its effect is. Everyone who was at the scene when Fowler was found Tuesday morning agree the event was a miracle. Searchers who found the plane say when they reached the site, Reverend Fowler was pinned in the wreckage beneath a tree that came to rest across the cockpit. They say his hands were together on his chest as if he were praying. Prayer helped his wife get through the ordeal, and she never doubted her husband was alive.
Never once. I just wanted to be able to get to him, and help him. I knew that the Lord is somewhere. I knew he was out there and that the Lord was going to take care of him so we could get to him.
Even the air safety investigator who visits crash sites for a living is surprised that Reverend Fowler survived, trapped in the wreckage for 14 hours.
Well, it is a little bit amazing, but seeing the actual scene, the trees did attenuate many of the G-forces of impact. The biggest thing that amazed most of us was the fact of the survival for a long period in shock.
Sheriff's Deputy Mike Broadway will never forget this crash. He was one of the first on the scene, and it was his excited cry across the radio that let everyone know Fowler was alive. It was a radio signal Mrs. Fowler will always remember as well.
Well, I jumped, and there was a policeman that came up, and he hugged me, and we jumped together. And I just thanked the Lord. I just couldn't praise the Lord enough. I raised my hands and thanked the Lord. But I have my husband.
Robert Kittle, News Center 13.